Today's reading is adapted from a story titled 10,000 Baby Names. It was a reflection written by Reverend Catherine McTeague, who was a minister at the Unitarian Church in Holmes, Connecticut, outside of Hartford. When my youngest daughter was about 2 years old, she came across a tattered paperback on our bookshelves titled 10,000 Baby Names, and for a little while, this was her favorite book. She was drawn by the shining face of the baby on the cover. She brought it to me over and over and demanded that I read through the names. This was a prelude to what was, at the time, her favorite story of all, how we chose her name. What's in a name? Always there's a story. You were named for a beloved relative, or contrarily, named after no one because your parents wanted a clean break from your family history. If you were a first son and your family went in for such things, you got to be called after your father and have junior tacked on. If you were a daughter, you could be named for a virtue or an aspiration, such as hope, serenity, or faith. Recalling some sweet romantic setting, your parents might have named you for their favorite Spanish or Italian village. Or perhaps you carry the name of one of their heroes or heroines, or more whimsically, some favorite musician or movie star. Or maybe you ended up with an affectionate name born of a sibling's mispronunciation, or some crazy thing you tried as an adolescent and you never lived down. Always there is a story. Sometimes in church we read aloud the names of the American soldiers who were killed in war. When I'm alone in my study the night before, I speak each name out loud, and then I wonder about their stories. I imagine these soldiers as the babies they once were, held in someone's arms at a baptism or a naming ceremony. The proud relatives were gathered around as the name was formally bestowed, and everyone beamed as the baby cooed or wailed or fidgeted. There was so much gladness and pride in each moment of the naming, and not once did anyone imagine that the road their baby walked would end 18 or 20 years later in a mix of blood and dust halfway around the world. Part of Witness for Peace on Memorial Day, a cairn of stones was built at a busy downtown intersection in Hartford. Each stone bared the name of a fallen American soldier or one of the tens of thousands of civilians who died in war. How do you choose one name from thousands to symbolize so much carnage and loss? Well, I finally brought 3 stones to the cairn. I brought one for each of my own 3 children. Each stone bore the name of a child who had died on the birthday that was the same date as one of mine. As I placed the stones, I wondered about their names. Always, there is a story.
Thank you for the lovely music. So beautiful and touching, and for the beautiful music you did yesterday at the service, which was so lovely. Before I talk about the Serenity Prayer, I think I need to talk about the word prayer itself, because it is not a word that goes down easily among you-yous. Prayer to whom or what is a typical response. Define your terms could be heard in response to such a word as prayer. So let me try to be as neutral as I possibly can and say that all interpretations of the word prayer are invited and embraced. And we might think of prayer as addressing a living reality that we define as God or Goddess, or it might be a slightly different orientation, like we address a higher power or it might be we address the Creator or creation itself. For some people, nature is God. So to each his or her own, it's your choice. But I think that our debate about the word God and prayer and so forth should not divert us from the wisdom of the Serenity Prayer. We could perhaps think of prayer in any form as a process of communicating our most deeply felt emotions and perspectives, to establish a connection to what is most real or ultimate or important or true or most life-enhancing, however we consider that. Each person, and certainly you use, define prayer in different ways. But regardless of our notions of prayer or our biases for or against, it is objectively true that the Serenity Prayer has been of value to millions of people all over the planet in their attempt, I believe, to achieve some degree of greater balance, peace, and well-being. The Serenity Prayer, though valued by millions over the world, has never been promoted by any religious organization on earth. It hasn't been a part of someone's or some religion's liturgy, although it's been passed through certainly the communication vehicles of a lot of different religious groups. The prayer is credited to a wide range of people and groups and sources, but it was actually written around 1932 by Dr. Reinhold Niebuhr, who was a professor at Union Theological Seminary in New York City and was a hugely influential figure. In 1934, Dr. Niebuhr's friend and neighbor, Dr. Howard Robbins, asked permission to use this prayer, which was originally part of a much longer prayer, for a book he was writing. It was published in that year in Dr. Robbins' Book of Prayers. And the standard version is, God, as we would interpret that, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. The prayer came to the attention of an early member of Alcoholics Anonymous in 1940. He read it it was read in an obituary in the New York Herald Tribune. And he liked it so much, the reader did, that he brought it to the attention of others. And soon it became part of the Alcoholics Anonymous literature. It spread far and wide from that point. Now, there are people who say that it came from various parts of history, unknown authors, and so forth, but there are actually examples of people before Niebuhr who had written something similar. For example, in around 100 AD, a Stoic philosopher had written, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Some things are up to us and some things are not up to us." And in the 11th century, a Jewish philosopher wrote the following: "At the head of all understanding," an interesting phrase, "at the head of all understanding is realizing what is and what cannot be, and consoling of what is not in our power to change. And the philosopher, last but not least, W.W. Bartley, juxtaposes Niebuhr's prayer with a Mother Goose rhyme from 1695 that expressed a similar sentiment. For every ailment under the sun, it read, there is a remedy or there is none. If there be one, try to find it. If there be none, never mind it. So that might be the best version of the Serenity Prayer. So there are glimpses here and there, even in recorded literature over history, of the sentiments reflected in the prayer. The Serenity Prayer, however we would interpret it, is not for the intellect. It is a message so simple a child could understand it. Rather, it is more like a guided meditation in which simple words lead to a progression of reflections, the end result being that it affects how we think, speak, and act. It is something to be integrated more than to be thought about or argued about. The prayer is so loved and appreciated by so many because I think it addresses a central issue of the human condition. And I find it most interesting that 11th century rabbi said in his comments, at the head of all understanding. Interesting phrase. But it addresses, I think, the Serenity Prayer, a core dilemma of the human condition. And that central dilemma is this: we seek to control things and people and events that are not in our power to control, nor in the realm of our responsibilities to control. We then become attached to expectations of what we think should happen regarding things that we are not able to control, or we should not want to be controlled by us. We then experience frustrations, hurts, misunderstandings, resentments, regrets, and suffering that flow from this morass of misunderstanding whose roots are very simple. This creates secondary problems, for in the process of doing this, we lose touch with what we can actually change. We lose touch with our own real, genuine efficacy. We lose touch of our power in regard to what we can really do in this life on this earth. And one casualty of this is that people lose touch with their own powers of choice. There are so many ways for frustration to arise in this process that it goes beyond our capacity to truly think about it. But wait, there's more. Imagine if this confusion that I describe of me trying to change you and you trying to change me and me trying to will something that I really have no power or responsibility to do, and you doing the same. Wonder if that dynamic is not only happening between two people, but imagine it's happening between all the members of a family. Now, there's more. Wonder if that dynamic is not just happening between a couple and between a nuclear family and an extended family, but within a whole congregation. and wonder if that dynamic is also happening in places like Congress or a local organization, etc. And the amount of confusion goes beyond our ability to imagine. This confusion I have described is like the spread of a highly contagious virus infecting everyone it touches. I think one reason for the popularity of the Serenity Prayer is it addresses this issue, which is at the heart and center of the human condition. The Serenity Prayer calls us back to asking, what can I control really? What can I really influence, truly? What is my responsibility? What is the realm, the sphere of my true responsibility? I think at the heart of the Serenity Prayer is a message that's hard to take in, and that's why it's so beloved in the abstract and practiced so little in the detail. Namely, that we are only responsible for our own actions, not anyone else. That the realm of what we can control is much smaller than we would imagine and hope for. The Serenity Prayer invites us to consider the cost of focusing on what we need to let go of and not exclusively focusing on what is our domain of responsibility and truly within our control. I think the Serenity Prayer brings us to focusing on ourselves, not others. It invites us to evaluate things we do not control and things we would like to change but cannot, so that we can see more clearly what we do actually change. The Serenity Prayer's wisdom can be used frequently. Each day, through the day, we can simply ask ourselves, what can I change about myself? What can I do or say this day to make my life and the life of those around me better? What do I need to let go of because I cannot change, because it brings me suffering, and because it binds me and prevents me from exerting my true power? Where can I go to work to make my life better now? It is a very simple prayer, but it covers a lot of territory. I close my remarks by repeating the prayer as embellished a bit slightly by some unknown person. God, give me grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other, enjoying one moment at a time, living one day at a time in peace. Amen.